We just established on Beis and Mid-Beis that even though the Rabbanon's basis, according to Rav, was the Heichel, was the structure of the Heichel, it was not Rabbi Yehuda's basis. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda, who says, as was explained, 40 or 50 amas tall, if you can go up to 50, clearly that can't, the ulam can't be the source. And therefore, we said the source was Pischa de Malachin, the doorways of royalty, of kings. So, bottom line is, Rabbi Yehuda feels that even a much higher height of the entranceway would be valid. Okay, so that's we're up to now, Rabbanah, about 10 lines from the bottom. So we're still not finished analyzing this whole thing according to Rav. Rabbanah, mi pischa shel heichel gemiri. So if you're going to still maintain that according to Rabbanah, it is the source of your 20 amos shear of how high the korah can be, based on how high the cross beam in the entranceway was of the heichel. If you're learning out from the heichel, then why don't you require doorways and doors like the heichel required? And yet it says the way to make a mavi valid, Beishamai Imrim Lechi Vekura. Beishamai requires both the post and the cross beam. Beisil Imrim Lechi Okara. Beisil says it's one or the other. You don't need both. Okay, so but one thing for sure, you don't need doors. Right? You don't need to have doors closing up the alleyway. Right? So all you need is the cross beam or the lechi, according to Beis Hillel, is how we paskin. So where are the doors if you're learning it out from the heichel? The heichel had doors. The answer is heichel it seems ba'almahud avdin. The heichel was merely a basis of tziyus. It wasn't there for any sort of. It wasn't officially part of a entranceway per se. You can have an entranceway without the doors. They were just made for privacy. So when you're made for privacy, it's doesn't automatically become part of the whole structure and definition of a doorway. Okay, so any Rashi, Lechi, 2 lines from the bottom. We're almost done. Rashi's on this page. Lechi kana oluach noutz, some kind of pole or a post, some kind of a stick. No, it's eitzel kosel echad rosho. That it's at the end of one of the walls. You extend the wall with this post, as we've probably seen along the way in various Eruvs that we've looked at, especially the makeshift ones that are trying to cover a much smaller area, like in camp and stuff. So you see these posts all the time. Okay, fine. So that takes care of that the doors do not pose a problem for the Rabbanon. But we still got issues here. Elamiata, but wait a minute, according to what you're saying, Lo Tahani Le Tzuras Pesach, then according to what you're saying, that the source and the basis of defining the dimensions of this mavli and all the other aspects of this Eruv is based on the Heichel. Well, the Heichel the doorway was 10 amos wide. And it had a tzuras Pesach, right? Because it had 2 posts on the side. It had a cross beam, so it looked like the structure, like we explained, of a tzuras Pesach. I guess similar to the old-fashioned goal post, whatever. You just have a base upside down U. Well, you have an upside down U over here, and yet how wide is the opening? Only 10 amos. Now, according to what you're saying, according to the Mishnah, you should be allowed to be more than 10 amos. And the logic, what we're thinking right now, is the only reason why the Heichel, it was only 10 amos wide is because of the shurim that it wanted to sort of, teach us. But intrinsically, it should have been more than 20 amos, because after all, why wouldn't you make the entrance to the Heichel the same dimensions as the entrance to the Ulam? The Ulam was 20 by 40. So basically, the logic should dictate that the Heichel should be 20 by 40. And yet, so based on the Mishnah, you really could have made it much wider. All you have to do is just have a tzuras Pesach, and you do have a tzuras Pesach. So it seems that the Heichel seems to be flying in the face of the rules over here, because the rules over here seem to be dictating that the Mishnah says if you have a tzuras Pesach, you can be wider than 10. So why wouldn't the Heichel have a tzuras, since it has a tzuras Pesach, why wouldn't its opening be wider than 10? So one more time, Elamiyata lo tahani lo tzuras Pesach. So if that's the case, you should not, the tours of Pesach should not really help you widen the opening, which the Mishnah says it can't. The Mishnah says, right, the typical limit is 10, but if you have a tours of Pesach, you can go more than 10 amos. But wait a minute, you shouldn't be allowed to go more than 10 amos based on the Eichel. The Eichel tours of Pesach havi, because the Eichel had a tours of Pesach. Afilachi haviloi, right? It did have a tours of Pesach in the Eichel, and yet afilachi eser amos hud raviach, and all the distance it was wide was 10. Okay, Alam Tanan, and yet it says, we learned in the Mishnah, that if it's more than 10 amis, with a tours of Pesach, you don't have to lessen it. So why would the Heichel rather only have a 10 amma wide entranceway if a tours of Pesach allowed you to go beyond? So it must be that the Heichel is not the source, because if that was the source, something doesn't seem to drive. The logic seems to be that you would go as wide as you could go halachically, but with a tours of Pesach, you could go wider halachically. So what's happening here? He says, last Rashi on the page, right? If the Heichel is the basis, you should not be allowed to be machshir and to say an opening is valid more than 10 amos with the tours of Pesach, which is exactly what the Mishnah tells us. That shouldn't be the case, because you see that the Heichel was limited to 10 amos even with the tours of Pesach. They didn't go wider than 10 amos, even though they could have. So don't you see that 10 is a limit? Where it says, well, sort of. Midi hu taima el Rav. He says, isn't this whole kasha is only according to Rav? Now, this whole problem is because we've established that the basis of the dimensions is the Heichel. It was only Rav. So for the only one who told us that the Heichel is the source for all these halachas is Rav. So according to Rav, Itaka doesn't say what we think it says. So one more time, Midi have who time el Rav. Is this not only a question according to Rav? Right, he's the only one who injected the Heichel into this whole business. Rav Yehuda Rav Kamei Rav. Well, I have a story that will indicate to you that Rav didn't buy into the Mishnah the way we have the Mishnah, because Rav Yehuda once taught to Chiba Rav in front of Rav, Ein Tzorach L'mayit. When he read the Mishnah the way we have it, that if you have a Tzuras of Pesach, that even if it's wider than 10 amos, you don't have to lessen it. You're perfectly fine. And what did Rav do? And Rav then opened up and he said, he chimed in right away, interrupted Rav Yehuda, who was teaching Chiyah Barav, the Mishnah, and he said, excuse him, what? He says, V'amalei Snaya, you must learn and change the Mishnah's reading to you have to lessen it. So according to Rav, it's taka consistent. Since the whole source is the Heichel, and the Heichel had Tzuras Pesach, and yet it was only 10 amos wide, so the halach is that if you go wider, you have to lessen it. Instead of saying you don't have to lessen it, he learns you have to lessen it. Big chiddush. Okay, being consistent that the source of this whole thing is the Heichel. Okay, so Rav is still standing. We have not knocked him out yet. He's still he's still alive and kicking. Elamiyata, next kash as we turn to the top of Gimel Amin Aleph, Elamiyata, but wait a minute. What about the fact, Lo Tehani Le Amaltara? Okay, if you're learning out from the Heichel again, the Heichel had Amaltaras, and yet it was limited to 20 amas high. So the same logic would apply. Whatever the rules were, it should have been higher if it could have been higher. If it wasn't higher, it must be because these are the dimensions that needed to be. Even though it had an amalter, it had some kind of a fancy, prominent protrusion that attracts your attention in terms of its beauty, or it's sort of stuck out. So if you have things that stand out and stick out by your beams, that would be l'chayr enough to justify going higher. And yet, the Heichel, at least we'll learn that. We'll learn that if you have an Amalter, you can go higher. But wait a minute. According to Rav, you had an Amalter in the Heichel, and you couldn't go higher. Because in the Heichel, the height was 20 amas. I want you to go to 30. You had an Amalter, you could go high. You could go to 40. You could have made it the same as the Ulam. Why? As we go weiter, the Heichel Amalter Havile, and the Heichel had an Amalter, it was still only 20 amas high. It didn't go higher, even though it technically could have gone higher. How do I know? The Tan, because it says, Chamesh Amaltero Shel Melo Hoyu Al Gabav Zulamayla Mizu. there were 5 protrusions, prominent types of structure, fancy structures of mela, of oak wood, I think it is, right? Fancy wood sticking out of the entranceway, making the top of the doorway extremely prominent. Okay, so you had it in the ulam. Logically, if you had it in the ulam, you had it also in the heichal. And if you had it in the heichal, then you should be able to go higher. And yet you didn't go higher. It says the tzant chamesha maltros shalmela hayu al gabav zulamayel zu v'zulamayel mizu. So therefore, if I can assume that if you had them in the ulam, you had the amaltras as well in the heichal, and if you follow the logic of the brayso that says that we know that once you have an amaltra that allows you to go higher up, why don't you go higher up? If the heichal is the source, why don't you go higher up? So Mara says, that's your kasha of v'hai mai tiyufta. What kind of question is that? Dilma kitanya hi dal maltras b'ulam tanya. Okay, perhaps it's really not a perhaps. What the Gemara is saying is that Bryce was specifically talking about amaltaras, referring to the ulam. Okay, and why are you extrapolating from the ulam to the heichal? Right, because we already said the Rabbanan learned that only from the heichal. They don't go to the ulam, and the heichal was 20. So who's to say that the amaltras also were existent in the heichal? Maybe they only existed in the ulam when you went in the first time, but maybe when you went to the next step, who says these amaltras existed? V'hai my kasha, that's how you're going to answer me? Dilma tavnas heichal kadavnas ulam. Why don't you assume another dilma that sort of means, not maybe, but definitively, I want to argue back, why would you assume that? Tavnas heichal kadavnas ulam. The structure of the heichal should logically have followed the structure of the ulam. And yet, Alam Amar V'Iloi Amarav Ruchava Dalid Afi She'ena Breya. Okay, that if you talk about the rules of the core of the crossbeam, it was 4 tfachim wide, even though it wasn't very strong. How strong? Meaning it can't even hold a brick or a half brick, without breaking. So it's a very shaky, weak type of crossbeam. But you know what? If the crossbeam is 4 tfachim wide, it's good enough, even though it's not sturdy, even though afa pisheina breya. Okay, that's halacha one, which does not concern us right now. But this does concern us. V'myesha maltara. But if it has these fancy protrusions, afil gavoy yosim eshamama, and it's harchamayit. Well, then the crossbeam is valid, even though it's more than 20 amas high, because your vision is going to go there. Oh my gosh, look at that! Look how beautiful those wonderful oak things sticking out there. The fancy architecture. So all this stuff is going to attract your attention. So you see, Rav himself says that if you have an amaltara, you don't have to lessen it. You can go above 20. So if Rav himself buys into this concept, and the basis is the heichal, well, something doesn't jive. The heichal had an amaltara, and yet it wasn't more than 20. It was limited to 20. So this seems to, we've got a problem. We've got a contradiction. According to Rav, if the heichal is the source, you should be the amaltara should have allowed you to make the entranceway to the heichal more than 20 amas. Rav Yosef, the answer. Rav Yosef says amaltra masisani. So the amaltara is a brisa. So it doesn't reflect Rav. In other words, everyone thought that Rav said it. If Rav said it, it's a direct contradiction between Rav learning out from the heichal versus Rav saying an amaltara works. Well, Yosef is now deflecting it a little bit by saying an amaltara is a brisa. So, well, a valid brisa or an invalid brisa? So, man ketanila, well, is it a valid brisa? Who learned it? In other words, how do you know it's a valid brisa? Maybe it's an invalid brisa, and by being an invalid brisa, maybe it would not be a question on Rav. Abai now wants to sort of, help us out here with Rav. V'chama, 1 second. Who's to say? Rav Yosef said it's a brisa. So if it's a brisa, it's not Rav, but it is still a Tana. To which the Gemara now says Haiman Katana, but who learned this brisa? But not every brisa is reliable. So Abai now is helping out the Makshin and not helping out the Taratzin. Let's see. V'chama braid the Rava bar Avua Katanila. Chama, the son of Rava bar Avua, learned it. Okay, and it is a reliable brisa. So it does represent a legitimate authority, and by by being a brisa, somehow we think we're deflecting from Rav. But we know, I mean, that the question is about to appear, and it's an obvious one. He says, V'tevi amaltera masisa. Fine. I mean, what are you accomplishing by saying this amaltera is a brisa? V'tikshel Rav. Let it be a brisa, but it's still a question of Rav. In other words, you're right. By saying it's a brisa and by even telling me it's a legit brisa, all that is fine, but it doesn't help with Rav, because Rav generally does not argue with Tanoim. So if it's a brisa and not Rav, all you've done is not made it a direct contradiction between one statement of Rav and another statement of Rav, but you still haven't answered a fundamental question that still exists, and that is Rav should not be arguing with a brisa. Generally speaking, Rav would be subservient to brisa. Rarely we say Rav Tanahu Polik, but we generally don't want to do that. So at this point, Rav is still arguing with a brisa, and that's a problem. The brisa says that a maltera allows you to go higher and does not require you to lessen the cross beam that's higher than 20, and yet we're learning it out from the heichal, and the heichal had a 20 amma height, and it had a malteras. So why couldn't it go higher? It says, so one second, v'tikshel l'rav. So masis, one second. So let a malter be a brisa, but it's still a shver and Rav. So Amocho Rav, Dal Anomeocha, Rav will answer back. He says, this brisa is not a kash on me. Why not? Because leave me out of the picture. Let's say you never had me before. You never had me saying anything. Amocho Rav, Dal Anomeocha, leave me out of this. Masisa Milo Kashan Adadi. Forget me. Maisi, you have a steer between one brisa and another brisa, because didn't we learn the brisa yesterday that said that the basis was the heichel? Remember, we had the brisa that says he says 20 because the heichel was 20. So that wasn't just Rav, that was a brisa. We actually quoted a Tana. So forget me. You have an authority that says heichel is the source. You have another brisa that says that a maltera allows you to go higher, and you don't have to lower it. And 20 did not have to be your highest cross beam. So you got a contradiction. Why one brisa says the heichal is the source, and the other brisa seems to say heichal is not the source, because heichal is the source, you should have to limit it to 20. So he says, isn't the Mishnah anyway, the two brises anyway shver on each other? Don't they contradict each other? To which so what are you going to have to answer to this apparent contradiction? Tanoi. That it's a machlokas tanaim, so I'll give the same answer. As long as I have an opinion that I could follow, once it's a machlokas tanaim, I can hide behind one of the tanaim. So once I've established that no matter how you cut it, you're going to have two different tanaim arguing about what the source is, I happen to ride on the shoulders of the one who says the source is the heichel. I happen to hold that way, and I like that tana. Well, that's Rav's approach to defend himself. So the best he can do right now is to make this into a machlokas tanaim, which we know many times you don't really want to do, but if you have no choice, you'll do it. But comes along with Nachem by Yitzchak Amar, he says not so fast. He says Rav Nachem is Amar beloy Rav masisan adodi lo kashin. Without Rav, I would not say that there's a steer between one brisa and another. I would not say it's a machlokas tanaim. I would have a way of wiggling out of this brisa without making it into a machlokas tanaim. How would I do that? Very simply, l'rabbanan kura taimamai mishum hekera. Okay, because the whole reason is recognition. The whole reason why we limit it to 20 is because we want you to recognize that there's a beam going across. The minute it goes higher than 20, you're not going to recognize it. But if it has a fancy protrusion with a gorgeous kind of, oak bars sticking out of it, then with different levels and, different gradations, well, that becomes a hecker that you will recognize. So it's all about recognition. So it's not a stira because it all follows one line of reasoning. The line of reasoning is: are you going to notice it or you're not going to notice it? A standard 20 amas is a maximum that you'll notice. But the minute you go, if you have something fancier, you'll notice something even above 20. So there's no stira. But wait a minute, but you're missing out a very important point. And that which you're going to attack me, what about the fact that he mentions the heichal, Who's to say, says Rav Nachman Yitzchak, that when you mention the Heichel, you're meaning the Heichel is your source? You don't mean your Heichel is your source. It's only Siman Ba'alma. It's only a way of remembering. All right, when these people wrote, these brises and Mishnayos, they did it in ways they wanted you to easily remember what is going on. And now this is our way of having you remember it by telling you, you know what, you want to know the height of a typical kura? It's the height of the heichel. The brise didn't mean the heichel is your source. The brise just meant that's a way of remembering what's the height. But the real source is logic. In other words, now we're moving away from Rav's concept that it's based on a limud from the Heichel. Right? Remember we said Pesach Oel Moed, and we had the Pesach by the Heichel, so we extrapolated over that's a definition of a Pesach, and it was 20 amas. Forget all that. It's a pure logic. You start totally fresh with your brain. Your brain says, well, how high is a Korah able to be while I'll still see it? The answer is 20 amas. However, when you have something protruding that makes it look very fancy and you'll notice it goes more than 20 amas. So if you leave Rav out, I don't have any problem. So really, Rav Nachman basically saying this really is an issue to you, and if according to you, you're forced to say it's a machlokas tanoim. According to us, we don't have to say that, and we're very happy saying everyone agrees. And the heichel was only mentioned as a siman ba'alma, not as a basis for the concept. Okay, let's catch up on the Rashis. Why should an amaltera help if the echel is your source? An amaltera should not help to allow a crossbeam more than 20 to work. We're going about to learn what is an amaltera and where does it say that it's okay to be above 20. Shalmela. So now this is what we're saying. There was 8 skadilim bo melin. Okay, veheim afatzim. Ublaz. A futz was like gold, right? Gold nuts. I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe oaks produce gold nut thing.
Right. It's oak with. What did they say here? They said it was oak with a lot of gold nut in it.
Okay.
Oak rich in gold nuts.
Fine.
I don't know what gold nuts are, but
it's a type of nut, I guess. Right? We had gold nut juice. We've had whatever. We've had our futzim a lot. Now we're ending the question. The Ashkan Mahanya Amaltera Ali B'Rav, right? We find that Amaltera helps according to Rav because he himself said it works. We didn't let him finish the whole thing until we knocked off the question. Okay, because we said it really wasn't Rav, it was a Brisa. So Rav said himself, Ruchava Dalid, this was the first halacha which was not relevant to this Gemara, that if the crossbeam is 4 tfachim wide, even though it's very thin, and it's not strong enough to hold a half brick, keshera, it's still kosher, because the width of the beam is so prominent that even though it's shvach, we're gonna allow it to work. Breya, and that which the Mishnah says later on in Afyud Gimel that it needs to be healthy enough and strong enough to hold the brick is kisheinu ruchav dalet tfachim kamer. It's only when it's not 4, because your typical crossbeam wasn't 4 tfachim deep. But if it's 4 tfachim deep, then you're good to go. V'meisha amalter, and this is what we need. Rav himself seemed to say if it had an amalter, tarte milikam Rav ulukula. Rav said 2 different halachas, and they're both leniencies that right now don't seem to make sense. At least the second one doesn't. First one we're fine with, but the second one about this amaltera shouldn't be true. So Rav Yosef says, calm down. Ho amaltera da'isi mishmei de Rav loy Rav amra. It wasn't Rav who said it. The tikshe de Rav de Rav, right? That you should ask a steer from one Rav to another Rav. It was a mistake. So, So Lamai said it's not a steer between one Rav and another Rav because it wasn't Rav who ever said the halacha. It was really a brisa. Okay, next Rashi. Masisin kilo. 1 second. Where? Right, the tikshel Rav. So fine. So says the Gemara. You think you really avoided the question? It should still be kash on Rav. Do chazina nahacha lo gamrei rabbanim mehecho militad amalter mahani. He says we still see it's still a kash on Rav because we see that the rabbanim did not learn out from the hechol. Since at the end of the day a brisa says that amalter is valid, that seems to show us that. You're not learning out from the Eichel. If you learn out from the Eichel, an Amaltera would not validate a higher than 20 height because by the Heichel it wasn't higher than 20. To which Rav comes back and says, Dala no mehacha, harimeni mikan, just take me out of here. Why are you even dafka making this a problem of me with Rav? Kilu shetikchi v'lo amarti davar zeh. He says, make it as if I never said it, and you still have a problem. I never said a word about this whole sugya. Wouldn't you have a problem between one Bryce and the other? The answer is you would. He says, well, not so fast. Well, yeah, wouldn't you have a problem? Kasha dadi. The Tanyul el behedya mavu shigvar michav yaiser mipischa shel heichal. Clearly, we said before that the heichal is the basis. So, forget Rav. The Brisa said the heichal was the basis. Alma rabbanan mei hasam gamrei. We see from there that the rabbanan learned it out from there. We got a recording here. So why are you making it a deal about me? I've got a steer anyway between one Bryce and another Bryce. To which Umar answers, no, it's Tanoihi. Tanadil el steer later abonon mehechol gamrei. So this is basically the last defense for Rav, that it's machlokas hanoim. Tanadil el steer later abonon mehechol gamrei. One Tana earlier says the source is the hechol. Yamaltra loy mahanya, and if you learn that way, the maltra is not going to help you to raise the height of the kura. V'aytana the maltra savalav mehechol gamrei. Okay, and the other one who says that a maltra will help you raise the height says that a maltra is not that the heichel is not the source. What the source is pure logic, and the logic allows you to go higher because it's prominent. You're gonna see it. Okay, so the dinami tonight. So just like you have to say it's machlokas Raim, say it for me too. I know ketana delel amri, and I learned like the earlier Tana. To which Rav Nachman Bitzchak says, not so fast. He says, "B'loy Rav, iloyav mefarish Rav lamasisa k'maisa v'yolef minei derabbanim eichel gamrei." Had it not been Rav who had understood that brisa to be saying that the source is the heichel, I would have answered you differently. I would say masisa adadi lo kasha, that there is no stira. The bein lahi masisa, no bein laho masisa, the maltra. Because I'll tell you, really, according to both opinions, it's one logic. They both agree. What's the logic? Kura l'rabbanan. Tamimai, why is the height of the 20 for a beam according to Rabbanan? What's the basis? Boy toch chaf am. Why do you need within 20 amas? Misham heker. The main source is the heker concept. The lerze inshe, people should see v'leidu the takanta avud, and they'll understand that you're making you're doing this for the betterment of of society to prevent them from making mistakes, and they have to see. So they should not confuse it with Rosh Hashanah. And that's why this Amaltra helps. The kivin the mistakli boy inches. People look at it; it's very prominent. It looks very it's very impressive. I feel you'll have a recognition even more than 20. What about the fact that we quote the Heichel? And that which the earlier Bryce spoke about, the opening of the Heichel, which seemed that was a source. Lav the Gamar Miyosam. Okay, it doesn't mean we learned it from there. It was Simona Ba'alma Nokat. It was rather just learned out from, it was a simon. It was a way of remembering it. Shol Tachlif Girsa de Esrim. We just want you to remember the number 20 and don't think it's 30, don't think it's 40. Let the opening of the doorway be a simon for you, and that's the way you'll remember it. Okay, because it's the first day of school, I'm going to stop here.